More on the changing face of Apple journalism. This is MacVoices. Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Truebill. Get control of your subscriptions at truebill.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is part 2 in a 3-part MacVoices live conversation that took on a bit of a life of its own. We continue with our examination of the changes in Apple-related journalism, how it has changed over the past few years, why it may not be a full-time job anymore, at least in the journalism area, and what that means for the future of how you will get your Apple news. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking.
I was going to say, some of these people we're mentioning as if, they're not that new. Like, I'm blanking the YouTuber guy. MKBHD. He's not that old. Hasn't been around that long.
That YouTuber guy.
He has.
There's one, and we know exactly who he is.
MKBHD has been around for a very long time.
You're forgetting how old I am.
Well, but he also wasn't.
He didn't start out as MKBHD. As a teenager. Like, he started out as like a 12, 13-year-old and like consistently put out content up until today.
Yeah.
And that, I think.
Right. But, how long ago was that? First of all, it had to be after YouTube came out.
Well, he was also,
compared to some of these other people we're talking about. I mean, it's
person,
great.
Not an Apple person. Like, he likes Apple and they're part of the rotation, but he's not.
That's true.
He's not an Apple person.
And that's more what I mean. The people who used to cut their teeth on we do the Apple conversation. I feel like there's less space for people who are exclusively all Apple all the time. And now you have other outlets that are larger that are turning their focus. And because they're larger, because they have a larger audience, just by the nature of how they do business, it makes it harder for people who have said, I came here for the community and I stayed for the tech. Because for me, I want to hear what Kelly's opinions are on the tech. I could care less about what the latest news is. It's more of what's Kelly's opinion of the latest news. So for me, it's a matter of I see a lot of my friends and I see a lot of people in the industry who I unfortunately haven't had the privilege of meeting yet saying, I have to change how I do this. I can't just be all Apple all the time, or I have to be tied to this other venue where I can be Apple all the time because their focus is everything else, and it's my job to be the Apple part of their focus.
Mm-hmm.
I have a thought about the Apple part of it. I think that, Apple is the only one for which there is really a community. It may be gaming to some extent, but, I used to sell a Windows version of Panorama. And one thing I discovered was that Windows people, there's no community. People aren't interested. They don't care about reviews. They don't follow it. So in fact, a lot of Windows people, they would be like, you sell software for Windows? Like, I didn't know there was any software other than Microsoft Office and maybe Photoshop. So, it was very difficult. And, I notice I said I used to, because I just gave up. It was like, it's impossible. And there was no, there did used to be a PC magazine, but there was, remember there used to be like version tracker. There was never anything like that for the Mac. There was Macintosh. There was, for the Windows, there was never anything, there was this whole community. There's all these user groups for the Mac, but most of that never existed on the Windows side. So, I think that's why, there's a lot more commentary and journalism around the Mac, because there's a community that's interested in it. And PCs, for the most part, are, that's the thing that I enter my accounts receivable in at work. And the last thing I want to do, is discuss that when I'm not at work, or even, and that's another thing is a lot of people, like, for example, buying software, you weren't selling to the customer, you were selling to somebody in a buying, thing. So, they didn't care about what features you had. They wanted to know about financing options and, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's, why there's, most of, I think the commentariat is, especially when you talk about hardware platforms, it's, it's around Apple and even Android. I don't think that there's too many people that are really that interested.
Don't tell Flo that.
Who's Flo?
Oh, I love Flo. I haven't been on
Progressive Insurance.
Oh, but
Says the insurance
No.
guy.
The Material podcast.
Flo that does material. Yeah.
Oh, that Flo. Oh.
Yeah. I've been on with her and Andy in there. Okay, what's funny is, that Flo is her Twitter username.
Well, and the whole industry has gotten so much bigger that, there's bound to be some for the other stuff now.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's the internet, so you don't have to, you can draw on a global audience. But I do think that the Mac has, it just has so much more community and people interested.
It was built in to begin with. Like, you mentioned user groups, and that's like another piece of that. Like, sort of what came out of that was people who go talk to lots of different user groups, like, I don't know, Chuck and Kelly and David. And, as random examples that I'm completely making up, right? And part of that is like the fact that community existed in the first place because we didn't have those opportunities anywhere. Is another piece of like where the commentary kind of came out of that. And I think that's another notable part of that, because I don't remember ever hearing about Windows user groups.
David, do you have you want to get?
Yeah, no, I have a point on that. In my career, in my business career, and I've paid my paid job for many years. Obviously, I've been working in the Windows world. And my first 6 years of starting, and I didn't have a choice. I mean, I was working in a business that I learned Windows, I learned DOS. I had to know it, and my first 6 years in my current job or career, that's all I did. But what really appealed to me was with Apple was the fact that I really liked the computers, and then got my first Mac in 2006, and then in 2008 I started supporting them in my current job, and then I got involved with user groups, and then I wanted to bring that up with what Kelly just said about user groups. I experienced Windows user groups, and oh my God, they're horrible. I mean, and I agree with Jim wholeheartedly that the fact that, and then you're probably smart getting out of the business of developing software for Windows, because you're right, people just don't care, and Apple users are just so passionate. Obviously, I used to lead an Apple user group here in Chicago for 10 years. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that, and that was because all of us as Apple users are very passionate. I met many of you, obviously Mac stock, and got me even more into it, even more so. And I'm in here for lifetime now, because I was inspired to start a podcast. I've been doing it now for 6 years. I continue to do that, and Jay, you made the comment that it's really going to be really hard to get into this now these days. But I'm glad I'm in it, and I may not have a huge audience, but I'm also enjoying it immensely what I do, and met all of you guys and have friends, and that's what's great about the Apple community, and I'm thoroughly thrilled the fact that I've been part of it and continue to be part of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, David, that there's a reason I show up when I can. It's because I love hanging out with everybody. And I think the message that we send to the next generation, which sadly probably won't be running blogs, they'll be running Substack newsletters and YouTube channels, and probably doing TikTok dances on top of iPads, who knows? But if you want to be in the community, I don't think the community is necessarily the publications out there, the people talking at the publications. I think that it is something different. It is the people who are down to tinker, the people that want to play with the new apps, the people that want to voice their frustrations on a Tuesday night talking to the internet. I think that the more and more that I find and meet interesting people through this community, the more and more I go, it's okay if my career isn't, all Apple all the time. And Kelly and I have talked a lot about transparency and things in the past. And I think that that's something that I'm glad here that I work with, Tuesday nights occasionally. I get to come in and treat this like work, even though I know that it's not my job. And I think part of that makes it fun. It means I get to ruffle Chuck's feathers. And what's he going to do? Fire me? Okay. I get my Tuesday night back.
Where's that eject button?
But
it's here somewhere.
That's right.
The cool thing about it is the community's always been open. It's always been inviting if you find the right folks in it. And you just latch on to them and it's friendly, it's welcome. And I mean, that's great. But if you're coming here to make that 6-figure salary with that brand new YouTube channel, congratulations. You just joined another 800,000 people on YouTube trying to do the exact same thing. Best of luck to you.
Yeah. Andrew, I want you in here because, you know, we always like to tease you about being the youngest one of the group here, especially if Brittany's not here. I mean, you're a young journalist in this, and it seems like you've picked security as one of your specialties, but that's far from the only thing you write about. I mean, how do you view your opportunities in this world?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Jay is saying. I'm the new kid on the block, and I'm not just talking about my age. I've only started writing online since about 2015. One of the things that I was reading online a long time ago was, you know, people always say, find your niche, find your specialty. And Apple is no longer a specialty. And, you know, now I'm for several years now, I'm trying to find my own interests, security, cryptocurrency, I guess, nowadays. And so it is a challenge to to be able to express your unique voice, and hopefully, if this is your career, to be able to make money off that. And I think, you know, I agree with the conversation. It's a challenge nowadays.
Okay, so I'm listening to you guys, and first of all, we all sound like a bunch of old people.
According to Andrew, all of us are old people. So just so we're clear, I just want to,
there's some truth to that, Kelly. But you know, where I was going with that is that we're bemoaning the fact that it's not like the good old days. And you know, Jim did a great job of pointing out that, hey, maybe the good old days weren't quite as good as we thought they were. It's just that we were part of a community, and this community was, you know, it was in growth mode. And it was, as who said it in the chat room? I think it was Brian. That, you know, there was an underdog mentality for Apple fans, and that certainly helped. I'm not sure what it says about our personalities that it all pulled us in, but at the same time, you know, it's there now. And by the way, you know, back then, think about the level of technology that the average person had access to, and it was kind of, by today's standards, it's pathetic. I mean, it's stone knives and bearskins. And now, you know, I've got more technology around me than I can handle. And I'm not talking about computers or Macs or iPhones or iPads. I'm just talking about, you know, what's my TV and my refrigerator and my
the
washer
internet.
dryer.
I mean, come on.
The
Most
internet,
of us had a computer before there was an internet to hook it to. And
exactly.
You know, the internet, and I think that's part of where all of this for us, Chuck, came from, was because, you know, like when the internet was getting off the ground, like everybody had a Windows machine, you know. So when the iMac came out and the I stood for internet, if anybody remembers old Jeff Goldblum commercials, then like that was part of what made it really compelling, was like the modem was just part of it, and it was understood that you were going to put it online and, you know, leave it awake all night because nobody was going to call you overnight. And then you could download your pirated copy of Photoshop 4. And I've heard. And there were lots of other things that happened, you know, at the time. And I think that's where a lot of the information came from, was because like you couldn't go to a store and buy a program for your Mac. You know, even then, like, you know, all of the like CompUSA had the little Apple store within a store in the back, and they would get people to volunteer to come back there and like nerd out with other Apple nerds. And like Apple people, at least in the mid to late 90s, were always sort of accustomed to finding a different source for information because there wasn't anything besides like Macworld magazine and then eventually Macworld's website. And then other people who were able to take that iMac and hook it to the internet and be able to build a website and update people on what was going on. And you didn't have a lot of that in other places. And I think that's part of where it came from on the Apple side was we were all just uniquely positioned to go, I know there's not going to be a regular old computer magazine out there, like unless it says Apple in the title or Mac in the title, it's not going to have anything for me. It's going to say it's Computer Monthly, but it's all going to be Windows junk that I don't care about and can't do anything with.
And Kelly, you're right, because, Apple was a very specialized market back then. I mean, even once the PC came out, there was a lot more material developed for the PC because it was perceived to be a business machine, and the Mac was not. The Apple II and the Mac were not. And so, it's just, I feel like it's trying to compare different worlds. The internet too. I mean, I hear what Jay's saying, and I agree with him that it's a lot more. It's a lot more diluted now, because you're right. Everybody can pick up. Everybody can build a website. Everybody can pick up a microphone. Heck, now, with cameras built into the computers, everybody can do a video show on YouTube if they want to. The question is, will they? And, back then, I mean, we can talk about, I don't want to take us down memory lane too far, but we can all talk about a lot of websites that are gone, because they either didn't figure out a perpetuation model, if that's what, like some businesses usually do. It was run by one or two people or some key people. And when they decided to hang it up, then that website went away. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, Jay, that it's even realistic at this point. I mean, how many people, I'm way out of my depth here, but, could you make a living off of a Corvette podcast? Could you make a living off of, just about any other specialty? I mean, I know people, and I think several of you do, trying to make livings off Star Trek podcasts. And, it's just not always realistic unless you have some kind of side gig or something else to monetize. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Truebill. Get control of your subscriptions at truebill.com/MacVoices. How many subscription services are you paying for each month? Do you even know? Subscriptions add up, and sometimes we don't notice the monthly deductions from our bank accounts. And those free trials you forgot about aren't so free when they start charging your credit card each month. Why not find out how much you can save with Truebill? Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't want, need, or simply forgot about. All your subscriptions are in one place, so you can cancel them or keep them right from the app. Have trouble canceling something? Your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions. So you don't have to. No talking to humans, no difficult conversations. Managing money can be hard, and juggling subscriptions, even harder. Don't go it alone. Get Truebill. Start canceling your unused subscriptions at truebill.com/MacVoices. Go right now, truebill.com/MacVoices. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Truebill for their support of MacVoices.
There's never been just start something up and you're good to go. Overnight successes virtually never are, right? It's, like you're saying with MKBHD, is that it? He did it for years and years and years. And then it became a success. How about, not Apple, but Scott Manley now on YouTube. There's a bunch of YouTubers. There's a YouTuber, now again, this is not Apple, but my wife and I watch a YouTube channel of these two people that live in Positano in Italy, and they're just, talking about their life. And it's pretty clear that they are now pretty much supporting themselves off of this YouTube. So, and I see new stuff, there's new stuff coming up, how about like Stephen Hackett? He's fairly new. David Sparks, and again, he started out and just plugged away and plugged away. It's a big deal. And he just recently quit being a lawyer, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's true. You know, if you really wanted to start something now and you had a voice and you had some resources so that you don't have to succeed tomorrow, you know, you've got to be able to. But the other way to do it is to be luck, and you land on a gold rush in the right, and yeah, there's no gold. Any gold rush that ever was, I think, but I'm not sure there ever was a gold rush for being an Apple commentator. I think people, they just loved doing it. They kept at it. In some cases, they fell into something that, like, oh, I can make a living at it. And some of the examples that we came up with, like, not build from nothing, like Jason Snell, you mentioned, well, he was editor of Macworld. Right. So, he leveraged that into his own thing. Whereas, say, Jerry Burrell, who was previously editor of Macworld, did not. And, he's now doing something that completely has nothing to do with the Mac community. So I think there's, always going to be, and I think, for me, mostly the independent voices are the ones that are interesting. I'm not really that interested in what the New York Times has to say, or the Wall Street Journal, or, that they tend to not have, it's a little too homogenized for me. I'm more, I think the independent voices are more interesting.
Here's the
I can
fun
hear
thing,
Jay
though.
already.
Yeah.
So Chuck interviewed me when I first started coming on to MacVoices long time ago. It was like, what, 2 years ago or something like that, Chuck? I don't know.
Well, if it was 2020, that was 6 years ago.
I think it was 2020 because I had just become a developer advocate, and Chuck had asked me,
"Hey, it's March again.
Is there something that bothers you about maybe being a sellout for?" And he meant it in the nicest way possible. Of like, you're doing this thing.
Thank you, Jay.
You're talking about a product, but you're doing it on behalf of the company. And when I listen to some of my mentors, and I'm on Relay FM, that's a disclosure thing. But when I talk to people like Steven or like Mike, and I ask them, what do you tell people when they ask you, what do you do? They say, I work in advertising. And I think that has become, and it's not because people don't know what podcasts are. Trust me, everybody's been listening to the Spotify debacle with He Who Shall Not Be Named on this show, and all this stuff. But the idea of what is it that we're really doing and is important. And yes, Stephen, after a long time of saying, I have a family to take care of, it doesn't make sense financially to do, even though everybody else was saying, yes, it does, you should do it, finally made that leap. And I'll let him tell the story. Ask him, don't ask me. Same thing with Sparky. Sparky was a lawyer. I mean, one thing we know is, like, lawyers, there's all these different things about lawyers. Apparently they like Disney a lot. But
that one lawyer does.
Yeah, that one lawyer.
Yeah. The thing with that is Sparky, Snell, all of these individuals came into a position to where they had the ability, they had the privilege to say, I'm in a position in my life where I can make this jump. The thing that I see, though, is I see a lot of people that reach out to me, that reach out to Mike as a part of his diversity podcasting initiative, which is accepting new people. So sign up for that. This wasn't a plug this whole time, I promise. But they come in and they say, how do I do this and make it as a success? And the answer is if you're talking about Apple, you kind of don't. You find something else that works. Or in Mike's case, you make 6 podcasts that all talk adjacent to Apple, or you run an entire network that's tech focused. You do all of these other things. You don't just sit there and talk about Apple. And the whole reason this topic came up was we have a select few of people that are left where their job is, I talk about Apple and maybe this one other thing. And it seems like more and more these people are saying, can't do it anymore. Can't just talk about these things. I either got to expand, I got to pick up a podcast, I got to add video to the mix, I got to do a bunch of other stuff, I got to create a Substack. I got to do TikTok dances on iPads. Like you got to do whatever it is that's going to allow you to continue doing the thing that you love to do. And it's just, it seems more and more like that is just not the way to go.
Are you saying, Jay, that you mean you would discourage people from trying to do this? Is that what you're saying? Because
I would discourage people from trying to make a career of it. I would say do it because you want to do it. Do something else as well that will finance all the fun things that you want to do. These lights and all this stuff, that doesn't come from me talking about productivity on a biweekly podcast. It comes from me showing my face up in front of my employer, smiling wide and bright and saying, let's talk about something that, depending on what day of the week it is, I might want to be talking about productivity instead. But you know what? I'm going to talk about this because it's what pays my bills. And when I get to, then I do that YouTube channel, youtube.com/KJY Miller. I promise, again, not a promo. Then I do those things and I get to use all the gadgets and gizmos. But at the end of the day, I have personally, after a decade, have given up on being a professional this. I would rather be a professional this other thing that also likes to play around with this stuff because it's a lot more stable and it's a lot safer.
Yeah, I've held a day job most of the time that I've been doing this for. Most of I was never a full-time person at Tua. I was only briefly a full-time person at Mac Observer, and all of that, and like you, Chuck, this is not the thing that you do because you have a paycheck addiction. And, just like it's not for me either. And that's I've been lucky enough that I've been in technology. So I've been able to leverage the stuff that I know as far as being professionally a Mac support person, a Mac IT person, a Mac, enterprise fixer of problems and occasional printer whisperer, I think is my official title now. Like those are things that I've been able to do. And so I have the time to so I have sort of this side gig of doing, the 2 Hour Talkcast. Like if it had been any time but Sunday nights, like it wouldn't have worked for me to be hosting that show. And, the way I was able to work it with Daily Observations was that was my lunch hour because it happens during, from 12 to 1 East Coast time. And so that was my lunch hour. And so that was what I spent my time doing instead of eating food. And so that's part of why I've been able to be at it as long as I have, is because I never made it the primary thing that I was doing. I always had the day job, and then I did this Apple thing on the side for all this time.
Well, but what Jay said encapsulates, I think, some of the advice that I don't know any podcaster that doesn't give this advice. And that is, don't think you're going to get rich. Right. Do it because you love it. Because if you don't love it, you will not stick with it. And I know David and I had this talk when he started his show, right? Because it's like, if you are you sure? No, it's not even that, Kelly. It's just, don't have the expectations, and it's got to be a fun thing. I mean, look, every one of us, has said, oh my God, I got to get a show out today. Or every one of us has said, oh my God, I get out of bed and go to work today. Okay, so it's not going to be fun 100% of the time, but it darn well better be fun a good 80 to 85%, or you're just going to be miserable and you're not going to stick with it. And I think, the comments that were being made here about Jason, Adam, everybody else that the comments were made about, they stuck with it. So they must have enjoyed it. Right. And I might even debate a couple of the people that you cited as, the main ones that quote unquote made it. I think they did have side gigs. They just may have been a little bit different kind of side gig, but they had something else going, because you're right. You can't do it. This is never going to be a high paying job, and certainly not anymore.
Hot take from Chuck. You can't do it. I got the sound bite. Let's go. Let's wrap it up.
Oh, God.
Good night, everybody.
Andrew, does any of this depress you? Our commentary on here from this family?
Yes, I'm very depressed.
He's drinking too.
We're
It's
sorry.
fine.
We're sorry.
He's got his moonshine.
Yeah, no, not moonshine. I just got beer. This is a beer Security Friday.
Okay. I have to ask that question because it sounds like we're talking down, and you might say the same thing to a kid who's trying out for the high school football team. Forget it because you're never going to make it. Well, a few people do. And I think the percentage of full-time Mac journalists is probably a lot smaller than the NFL or the NBA. But some people do if you're willing to make the sacrifices and stick with it. The overnight success part is, a 10-year overnight success, right? So.
I'll say that I do it because I thoroughly enjoy it. People are listening. If people weren't listening, I wouldn't do it. And I see the numbers and they are listening. So I'll continue to do it. And I'm not getting rich off of it at all. I mean, and in fact, I'm investing a lot into it to make sure that it continues to go as it's going today. I'll be at 200 episodes pretty soon here. And that's quite a, quite a mark as itself. You were on the 100th episode.
I know. I'm like, I did episode 100.
Yeah. So I mean, I just wanted to keep it going. It started slow, and I worked my way up, and now it's become a weekly show. And I'm proud of what I've done, and I think people who are doing this are doing it because they enjoy it. And I write what you said, Chuck. We're not going to make any money off this, but let's do something fun, and we have our day gig. So,
and here's the simple fact of the matter that, no matter how many people are watching this now or later, there's some idiot with, a dog that is 5 years old and looks like, I don't know what, a tree trunk that is going to have a video that goes viral
right.
and get all those hits, so there's no respect for us guys working and putting this stuff out constantly, but there's always that, that one hit wonder or the folks that just, well, a euphemism, Kelly.
I know.
But it's just I think you got to do it. We do this Tuesday nights because it's fun, and
exactly.
we have people that show up in the chat room every weekend. Is it a huge audience? No. And MacVoices itself has a wider audience, just like David's show does, and Jay's show, and a lot of others that are audio only. But I don't know that it's a realistic expectation. I'm not even sure it ever really was. I would love to get some of those guys, some of the senior members of the community, and say, did you really start out this way? I mean, I know Ted Landau didn't. Ted Landau started out in a completely different field, and then became one of the big voices in the Apple tech and troubleshooting community. Our discussion of Apple journalism wraps up in the next edition of MacVoices. The MacVoices Live panel contemplates podcasting and how it has changed Apple journalism, what it means for the future of how you get your information, and whether or not those sources can be trusted. That's next time on MacVoices. I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.